All right, y'all. I think we're about ready to go. Everybody feeling good? Everybody got your coffees? I'm going to cough a lot in the beginning of today's talk, and then I'm going to hopefully calm down some as we go along. So when I was doing the turnaround that I did, there were 3 tools that I implemented that made the biggest difference, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We did a lot of different things in all the other businesses I've managed. I've implemented similar kinds of systems. We've done lots and lots and lots of different things, but it always kind of comes back to these 3 basic things. There's a ton that can be said about this. I could probably talk for days about this stuff. I did the same talk about, several months ago in Playa del Carmen. I'm trying to just take it down to meat and potatoes today, just what you need to know. So feel free to ask questions as we go along. There's a lot of stuff I'm not going to have time to cover, but I'll do the best I can to answer questions as we go along.
Yeah, I have a very short question. You come to these 3 tools, you think because they're effective or also because there is a personal preference that work good for you?
Because they're effective. Because these are not my tools. Like going into venture capital and private equity, there's some flavor of this, or if they're doing an okay job or better, there's some flavor of this all the time. So, and these are tools that are implemented at some of the largest businesses, or some of the most fast-moving businesses in the world. The way that some of these things are implemented work at small to mid-sized businesses, but once you're hitting 10, 15, 20,000 people, it starts to break down some. They have other more robust systems for handling it at what I would consider true enterprise. So these are small, mid-sized business tools. They still apply. Forecasting still applies. Some things still apply no matter what, and flavors of them still apply no matter what, even at true enterprise. They just do it different. I think everybody knows me. Does anybody here not know me? No? Okay, cool. All right, so by the end of today, you're going to be able to know how to build a forecast. That doesn't mean that you're going to know all the formulas and know the step-by-step of how to do it, but you're going to be able to work with a model builder and understand the tools understand the pieces they need to put together an effective forecast. You're going to be able to implement cascading goals into your organization. This is very similar to OKRs. I have a different little flavor of it, but you could use OKRs, you can use what I've got. It's pretty similar. And then have a scorecard that works for your team, as well as think about how to put together what I consider a coach's card versus a scorecard. So it seems like 3 pretty simple things, but having implemented this over and over and over again, there are ways to do this that work better or worse. I've seen people try to implement OKRs multiple times, many times now, and fail. Either they'll fail on the implementation, or they'll fail after a certain amount of time. They'll go a year, they'll go 2 years, and then it just all starts to fall apart. So in this case, I'm going to show you how to implement this stuff and keep it moving all the time. All right, any questions so far? Cool. All right, so when we're looking at this kind of thing, we're looking at predicting the future, looking forward, and looking backwards. And so when you're thinking about these 3 different tools, when you think about the forecast, what you're doing is you're predicting the future. And the better job you do predicting the future, the more secure your business is. In a lot of ways, at a certain size of business, predicting the future becomes more important than revenue generation or revenue growth. So, because if you are, if let's say you're a VC business or a VC-funded business or you're a PE-funded business, your ability to predict the future enables you to raise capital. The more secure you are in your ability to predict the future, the better your investors feel. Even if the business is going down a little bit, if you can tell we're going to go down by X%, people trust you more. The prediction is critically important, and so. What I like to start with when I'm implementing this, a lot of people start with a scorecard. They like to know what's going on right now. And then they'll start putting in place goals. And then maybe at some point in the future, they'll put in place a forecast, maybe, possibly. I like to flip that around, and I like to do the forecast first, because I like to know how, like, are the predictions that I'm making or the executive in the company is making and the team is making, the things that the team thinks are going to work, are they actually working or not? So, if you've got a really good forecast, the forecast isn't just this much, it is a mathematical model that shows what's going to happen, but it's based on what we think we're going to do. So it's based on, we're going to hire these people. We're going to do this campaign. It's going to have this kind of effect. Then we're going to do this campaign. It's going to have this kind of effect. We're going to figure this particular piece out. It's going to have this kind of effect. And so I like to know, up front, as soon as possible, what does the future of the business look like? And in a lot of cases, is it worth doing? Especially if it's a startup, like, should we actually do this? Like, or if we're looking at, like, what does the future of the business look like for a business that's established? Is that enough? Should we be doing things differently? It's really important to know what does that future look like. Once we have the forecast informs our goals, because as you're building the forecast, you kind of do these two things together to some extent. But I like to do the forecast first. But the reason is because you're going to say, like, we're going to do these things and it's going to look like this. Okay, cool. What are those things you're going to do? What are the big picture items you're going to do with that? And then once we get into the goals, it's how do we actually execute on these big picture items? And then we're looking back saying, what is the trending on how we're doing and how's that affecting the company? And there's your scorecard. Everybody good on that? Any questions so far? How many people here have a forecast? How many people have a forecast that is weekly instead of quarterly? Okay, cool. So, I'm going to talk about that in just a second.
Monthly also. Yeah, monthly.
Yeah, all right, so monthly, quarterly. All right, so I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So the problem with EOS, Traction, OKRs, one of the biggest problems I have with both of these tools, with these systems, is that they don't actually talk about forecasting. Like very often, like these are great tools. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use them. I use them extensively. But they don't connect the actual forecast in there. And so I see this all the time when you're talking about, like, setting these BHAGs, these big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And people will be like, oh, I'm going to make $10 million, $50 million, $100 million, whatever that thing is. But then there's no connection to the actual forecast, like, how are you going to get there? And people set these big goals that are 100% impossible. And so once you build a forecast, then you can see, like, oh, actually maybe that 50 million is a little too high. Let's bring that down to 6 million, or whatever it may be. But you can see exactly how you're going to get there in black and white. And that makes a massive difference. And so all the time, like, that's the problem I see with these two tools, but that's what we're going to address a lot today. All right. So this is similar to what you see with Traction. This is my little flavor of it. What we're really going to be addressing here are these three items. So, scorecard is part of your data analytics. Your execution and accountability, there's your OKRs and money and finance piece. So obviously, like, there's a lot of other things that go into a business having to do with all of these things outside of just the three things that we're talking about today. But, I just want to make sure you guys see, like, kind of what we're going to be looking at. All right. So first off, financial modeling. All right. Who said they have a forecast that does monthly forecast? All right. How often do you pay people?
Monthly.
You pay monthly? I mean, how often do you pay people?
Monthly.
Okay, cool. Do you have anybody you don't pay monthly? No. Okay, cool. Then that works then. In a lot of businesses, what I see is they have a quarterly forecast, or they have a monthly forecast, but they're paying people every other week, or they have other payments going out, and then what ends up happening is they'll have a negative week, and they don't see it, and so that like things are coming down, like their revenue is going down for whatever reason. Maybe there's a plan for it to come back up, and it looks great on the forecast. They're like, yeah, we're going to make it. It's going to be fine. But when you break it down to a monthly forecast, monthly to a weekly forecast, all of a sudden they realize like, oh, we're going to have a negative week in there. Oh, we're going to have 2 negative weeks. Over the course of, X number of months, we're going to have a bunch of negative weeks, but we couldn't tell because we had a monthly forecast, not a weekly forecast. That said, also, when you're doing, if you're running a business that's going to raise capital or that has the potential to be down to the wire on things, is really important you have that weekly forecast because sometimes you have to move money around. Having run turnarounds, constantly working on like a 13-week cash flow statement just to figure out like how is the money going to be moved around. And so like that weekly makes a huge difference, a massive difference. Right? The other thing is that I see the difference between this investment model and operational model a lot. When people are starting a business or they're planning something out, they'll put together an investment model, which is basically they do it quarterly, because really what they're looking at is what is the 2 year, 3 year, 2 years or 3 years out, what is this looking like? They're really just showing like the business is going to do this because we put money in and then we're going to eat through it and then it's going to come back up and it's going to look great. And investors look at this investment model and they go, yeah, that looks good, let's do that. Here's some money, But if we're running the business, we need an operational model. Everybody good? Everybody feeling good on this so far? All right, cool. All right, so we're going to look at that operational model today, starting off. All right, financial foresight. It makes you a realist. That was what I was saying before about setting big goals and then maybe making them, maybe not making them. How many people here have set a big goal and then missed it? How many people here looked at the numbers and was like, yeah, I can 100% make that goal? How many people were here were like, that's it. Like, I looked at the numbers and I'm pretty sure I can make that big giant goal. Okay, two, okay. You're like, yeah. So I've definitely set big goals with my businesses and been like, yeah, we're gonna make that. And I didn't do this, and it was never possible. And that's kind of one of the things. Like when you set these big goals and you tell your team you're gonna make these big goals, and then you miss them. You're taking a hit on morale within your team for something that didn't need to happen. So, and I've 100% done that. And this is one of the reasons I got to be like such a stickler for doing forecasts is because I set these things up and I set the team up for failure. Like we were never gonna make it. And yeah, like I just set them up to feel bad. And that's a terrible thing to do to your team. Which reminds me, I forgot to ask. Team sizes. Let's do it real quick on team sizes. Raise your hand if you are just one person. Okay, 2 to 5. 2 people. 5 to 10. Okay, 10 to 20. 20 to 50. Okay, cool. All right. So financial foresight makes you a realist. Real decisions based on real numbers. Super important thing to have in business, right? Realistic growth expectations. See failures before they happen. Give you the perspective of an investor and create a plan that actually works. So one of the things that I've found to be the most valuable for me over time has actually been this perspective of an investor. Because the more businesses I've sold, I've exited that I've helped grow, that maybe I had a little piece of, that it wasn't just all mine, the more and more I felt like an investor. And the more separation that's given me, but it really gives you that separation and that overview by having a great forecast. And I remember when I was meeting with these private equity guys, every single month they would look at just the numbers. Like they would be like, don't show me the other shit. Just show me the numbers. Just show me your P&L. Show me your cash flow. Show me your forecast. Show me your variance. Show me your budget actuals. That's all they wanted to see. And at first, I was kind of thrown off by that because I was like, well, what about all the stuff that we're doing? And they're like, we don't care. What we care about is how much money you're making. What is your EBITDA? Is your EBITDA going up or is it going down? And at the end of the day, you as investors in your businesses, that's what you should be looking at. I know that people here are like, well, we're doing all this stuff. I'm operations. I'm doing blah, 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 blah. But really, like at the end of the day, we're looking at how big is the business, how much money is it making? How good is it making your life? I think if you guys have heard me talk about this before, I've said this over and over again, don't fall in love with your businesses. Your businesses are there to make you money and to make your life good. I'm not saying that you don't have an obligation to employees or hardworking people within your teams, but end of the day, your business is there to make your life good and to make money for you. Don't fall in love with your business. And when you fall in love with your business, you stop having this perspective of an investor. And also, the more you have that perspective of an investor, the more that you're looking at just the numbers, the more that I think the more power you have over the business, less power the business has over you. All right. I'm pretty sure everybody knows this. I hope so. There's really only two things you can do. You can increase revenue, you can decrease costs. You can also add capital. Like overall, like there's kind of breaks into 5 major levers in the business. This is important because when we're looking at this model that we're going to dig into in a minute, you start realizing that these really are the only things that you can do. Like that's it. You've got a product line. You can increase the number of customers. You can increase how much they're paying you. You can keep them longer. Keep them from leaving. That's it. That's what you got. 3 things. You can add some money to bring in more, or you can cut some costs in your operations. But that's it. And so we're building this model in just a minute. Think about it like this. All right. So when we're looking at a financial model, pretty much all the models should at least have this. I've got 2 models we're going to be looking at today. One is going to be my SaaS model, just because I don't have a model for everybody here. So we're going to look at the SaaS model because that's what I'm most familiar with. And then I'm going to try to extrapolate that, answer questions for y'all's businesses based on that. And then we're going to look, if we have time, at my FP&A SaaS model, which is built by like a massive team of financial planning and analysis team, and how they put that together. It's the same thing, it's just way more robust. So, but pretty much all the time, you're going to have your company, your revenues, your costs. It doesn't always have to be sales team hiring. It can just be a hiring plan, like a headcount planner. And then I like to have an infrastructure costs area. This is what I consider to be a fairly simple version of this, fairly simple model. It's going to look complicated for people who haven't done it before, but after you get in and play around with it for a little bit, you're going to find it's really not that complicated. So this looks like your P&L, except instead of looking backwards on a historical P&L, we're looking forwards. Like I know it says January 22 because I didn't change the dates on it. Built it in 22, looking forward, so that we can see, like how, where's our operating total operating cash flow negative? Where does it start to go positive? How does it start to go up? What does our bank balance look like moving forward, et cetera? Does this look familiar? Does anybody here? Does this not look familiar to anybody here? Cool. Do you have any questions on it?
No, the only question, I see March 2 times.
Where's March 2 times?
Yeah, it was like an X intervention.
Oh yeah, you're right. I didn't realize it. In the model, it should be gone. So I hope. Otherwise, I gotta change some formulas around. I think that probably they were changing dates on it. It looks like what happened is they missed December on here.
It looks like the numbers are based on percentage of revenue. So you put in the assumed percentage of revenue, and then that calculates the number.
I'll show you in just a second. All right, so I'm going to go over the major pieces on the PowerPoint, and then I'm actually going to pull up the document, and we're going to dig into it together. So, all right, so this is on the revenue tab, at the top of the revenue tab. What we're looking at is what are the assumptions up here that drive the growth of this business. So in this particular case, this is a SaaS business. This is a startup SaaS business. Do you want me to move over so you can get the full shot? I have all the slides, so everybody, like at the end, you'll have all the slides. You'll have all the all the Excel docs, everything. So when we're building this out, we're planning out like what are the signups at the beginning of the first month? What are the new signups in month 0? Organic signups, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What are the things that drive the growth of the business? So in this particular case, signups drive customers. Customers from basic plan might move over to the pro plan, might move up to the enterprise plan. Actually, there's no connection between pro plan and enterprise plan in this particular one. But the important thing is you can see that we just have a set of numbers right here that drive everything forward. If, for example, we want to play around and see like what happens if in month whatever, I'm going to do this new campaign and it's going to generate X, I think it's going to generate X number of new customers. I could actually just drop another line in here. I would add a formula over here that says like add X percentage to this particular line starting here. And it would say something like, you know, new campaign of blah, 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 link over to another document. It's like this is what we're going to do in that campaign. But then this is the impact to the numbers moving forward. And so as you're building this thing out, you can actually see like, okay, well, I'm going to do this campaign, and then I'm going to do this campaign, and then I'm going to make this change in the business. I'm going to fire this guy, pain in the ass. I'm going to do X, Y, Z things, and this is what my bank balance looks like moving forward based on that. And questions about these assumptions? They're like the idea of putting in place an assumptions area within your document. A lot of what I would call more robust forecasts don't actually build it in like this. I prefer it like this on the left-hand side because this way my major assumptions, I can just see them right there, right? And they're always top of mind. Whereas like if you have a really big company and you have a model builder build it for you, they build it into the spreadsheet and it's freaking giant pain to figure out what they did. So when you're telling somebody how to build it for you, it depends on the size of your business. If you're doing, you know, 30, 40, 50 million dollars, you have a lot of product lines, or you have a lot of service lines, sometimes the way that those model builders build it is actually a little bit better. But if you're running a business that's, I don't know, like 10, 15, 20 million dollars or less, I think this is way easier to work with. Cool. Any questions on that?
Would you do parallel models just to see them side by side?
Say it again, please.
Do you do like parallel prototyping?
Yeah, actually, I do. Great question. This is a really good question.
You cannot really compare them, right?
So what I'll do is I'll actually build it twice. I'll just duplicate the file and I'll make the changes so I can see what it looks like. If you're doing something like, if you have a model builder building it for you, they can also build like a drop down in there that's like option 1, option 2. So, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute as far as how to build different cases. Because what I do for incentivizing team members is I'll build my base case, which is my, actually I think it's upcoming. Here we go, building cases. There you go. So what I'll do is I'll build a base case that's like, I know the last year the company was doing, you know, grew at a 10% rate, right? I'm really confident this year the company's going to grow at a 10% rate. So if we don't do anything, as long as we just don't screw up, we're going to grow at a 10% rate. So that's kind of my base or budget case. And then my growth case, or what I often call my management case, is like, all right, what if we work hard? Like, what if we do some additional things? Like, let's get the team together and talk about like, what is that going to look like? What could we get up to? Now that we've got these major assumptions built in, we can say like, okay, well, what if we were able to grow, you know, this particular piece of the pie by like 5% more? And what if we were able to grow this by 5% more? What if we were able to shift this area here? Or could we cut costs over there? Like, what would that look like? And then you can see, what does that growth case or that management case look like? When I say management case, a lot of times it's the management team telling me what they think it should be, which is why I like to call it the management case. So you can come in and just say like, okay, well that's that. And then the stretch case is like, a lot of times what I do on the stretch case is if we do a good job and we're a little bit lucky. Like a lot of times people build things out that's like, they'll build into their cases luck. And I don't like to build luck into my case. I like to build luck into my case just on the best case scenario. So sometimes you feel like you're going to be lucky. You're like, well, you know, things are shifting in my favor. Like this could keep going. We could be really good. Let's build it out. Let's take a look at what that looks like. But let's not let's not bank on it. For the most part, what I do is I like to use this middle case here. I like the management team to have told me what they're going to do to get to a certain level, and then I build my employee incentivization based on that.
So why don't you have a downside case?
The budget case usually covers like downside ideas. The other side is like, if we're doing analysis to figure out like what's the worst case scenario, we'll do that. But generally, I guess maybe I'm just an optimist. I don't know. I never really think about the downside. It's a good question though. Do you build downside cases?
Well, I used to in banking and private equity always had downside because we obviously work with debt, right? So we need to understand what is the revenue and profit scenario where the debt eats up all our cash and therefore we go bankrupt. Right now, I even stopped doing the cases just because, for example, instead of having the assumptions on the left in one column, I have all my assumptions actually as rows, and I can just manually check quickly in different columns, and therefore I don't really need to do the cases as much.
Gotcha.
Because also, if you go really granular, so I have like, right now I have 2,000 rows in my model, right?
Yeah.
If I then have cases on top of that, it will be like 8,000 rows. And it will just fuck up everything. And also, I changed from Excel to Google Sheets. So my team is doing all the updates now. And if I do cases, Google Sheets is really bad.
Yeah, that's why I just duplicate the file in Google Sheets.
Yeah, but then once you duplicate, it's like work, right?
Yep.
And I'm trying not to do any work anymore and have my team do everything.
Yep.
And therefore I stopped doing cases. But for anybody who starts with, for sure I recommend cases, for sure.
Yeah. So I like to build my employee bonus plans based on the difference between my base and my growth cases. So if I know, like I said, the business is growing at 10% already, if we can push it up to 20% growth, that's what I want to see some growth, so incentive plans built on. Now, there's a difference here between small businesses and mid-sized businesses or large businesses. In some of like the private equity funded businesses, or in some cases VC funded businesses, you got to build executive bonus structures one way or the other. You have to have executive alignment one way or the other, because if you don't have executive alignment in funded businesses, executives will bail. And so even on budget cases or base cases for funded businesses, you're still building in executive alignment, executive incentivization structures. So, and it can also be, excuse me, it can also be, there's other cases for building in incentivization for different reasons as well. For example, like I was running a business that was negative. There was no growth, or there was growth, but first there was stabilization. But they still had to build in executive alignment incentivization structures, because otherwise executives are just like, yeah, I'm not doing this because it's super hard and it's stressful. And people can get a job doing something else that's way easier, way more fun than doing turnaround stuff and doing turnarounds and having zero additional whatever. You see what I'm saying? All right. So, where was it going? Employees and incentives. And there's ways to build really nice incentive plans into this. I like to use the EBITDA-based system. There's a lot of different ways of doing this. Probably an infinite number of ways of building incentive plans. I'm going to show you one of them. It's kind of a standard in private equity. You can do it in. You can take this and break it apart into lots and lots of different things. So we incentivize employees based on growth and overcoming obstacles. So I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like in just a minute. And then I love having a bonus pool with a little bit extra padding so I can give spot bonuses as we go along as well. And then this also shows employees that path to growth, how they're going to get to this place. But it also directs the flow of the company. When you build an incentive plan around certain obstacles you're going to overcome, or what you're going to do in the business around that forecast, around those goals that you're putting together for the year, as the investor, you're directing where this company is going through incentives. Like I didn't really realize how powerful those kinds of incentive plans can be until I really saw them in action in private equity. Like it drives the direction of the business, because every single month or every single quarter when you're doing your board meetings, what do the executives bring up? Here's the bonus plan. Here's how far we are aligned to that bonus plan. These are the things that we're doing to hit our bonuses. And also if you're directing the board meetings to be like that, even if it's your business and maybe you're stepping out, you're putting another executive in place and you show them how to do it, they'll fall into going the direction that you put in place for them with those plans. Make sense? Any questions on that? Everybody feeling good? All right, cool. All right, so this is a bonus pool case for a tiny business, a little tiny business. Actually, I need to redo this for a bigger business. So 3 cases: 250 to 256, mid case 250 to 268, growth case 250 to 286. Potential bonus on something like this, I would go nothing for the base case. Mid case, I would do like 5 to 18K for for a mid case bonus pool, and then 15 to 36K, depending upon what you want to keep for yourself, for that growth case. So you can just see, like, what does that revenue recognition look like? Like, we're going to recognize this much revenue in the year, and then you can tell, like, the difference between, here to here, there's no incentive. Here to here, we have, like that much incentive. Here to here, we have a little bit more, like that much incentive. Make sense? Cool. All right. So this is an example on that tiny business of how you might do something like this. So the first goal would be revenue growth. So if you don't hit your revenue growth goal, there's no bonus. Like, there's nothing. But you still have to hit these other goals in order to unlock those other pieces of the bonus pool. So if, let's say on that revenue growth one, company hits 50% revenue, hits 100% of the revenue goal they're trying to get, they get 50% of the bonus pool is now unlocked for the employees, and the executives and employees. If they hit that demand generation goal, now they get the extra 10%, then brand, then cost savings. So they're unlocking those percentages of the bonus pool by hitting those goals. Make sense? Question?
Is this for all the company, or for example, someone working in SEO will have all of their incentive on demand generation?
Great question. I like to do it on the entire company, and the reason for that is the way that I set up the goals, the OKRs, the cascading goals system. Because when somebody is not on track to meet their goal, the question comes up: who else in this company can help this person or this team meet their goal? So it's not just one person working alone doing a thing. It's the entire company coming together to solve that thing. Like, a lot of times, I think that salespeople feel like they're operating alone. They're like, oh, I'm out there, I'm making sales. And what I like to remind salespeople of every single time is that you are just the tip of this iceberg. There is a massive organization underneath supporting you. You are not doing this alone. Everybody has to operate the right way to get you to that place where you're making that commission. So everybody operates together. It's a team, we all do it together. And so because of that, we do all of this together. Question?
Do you pay bonuses on a quarterly basis or annual basis?
So in the private equity world, I was doing it on an annual basis. Do we have a drink for somebody? I was doing it on an annual basis. However, I wanted to do it on a quarterly basis, and my board wouldn't let me. And they wouldn't let me because the revenue in the business was so, like, it was a turnaround. It was so underwater that they were like, we can't justify it. So
Let's say in a perfect world, if you were to have your own business, would it be quarterly or annual?
it depends on the business. Depends on I probably wouldn't do it quarterly. I'd probably do it every other quarter, every 6 months. Yeah, because I think a quarter, like, maybe in certain cases I would do spot bonuses at the end of the quarter. But what you did in that quarter, for most businesses, you're not going to really see the results of that for at least another quarter. So I feel like I would want to see the results of what happened before I'm going to give bonuses on it.
How much expertise do you think is required within the team to actually incentivize them? Because I mean, many of us maybe have VAs or like juniors that actually don't have experience, so they don't really have the ownership or the experience to actually grow. They need strong guidance from like.
That's the CEO's job, isn't it?
I guess. But would you still incentivize them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they just turn it into hustle energy, and that's how they make the difference instead of like owning the path. And
Well, I think that the ownership of the path is putting in place effective management structures that give them the ability to take ownership is something that took me a long time to realize that I really needed to do and understand how to do. And so I'll give you a really good example. When I bring on a new executive assistant, which usually is a much more capable person than a virtual VA, what I do is I send them to school for months. I'll send them to marketing school, to product ownership school, to project management school, to sales school. So like all four of those different, and finance as well. Like they're still working during that time, but they're going to school for all of that time. And I find a lot of people are like, well, I have this VA and that's all they do and blah, blah, blah. And maybe sometimes that's just right. They're just like, they fill this one function and that's it. We're never going to use them for anything else. But a lot of people are capable of learning a lot. And I think that if you're thinking that this person is going to grow, consider how you're going to grow them. And I think that, like I said, it took me a long time to realize that I really needed to invest in people's education. But after I did it, it made all the difference. And then it's also about your managers or you doing one-on-ones with your people and making sure that when they're, if they want to own that growth, that you're coaching them up in how to own that growth. For the most part, people want to be successful in their jobs and they want that growth. Leaders in the businesses, that's your job to give that to them.
As you're incentivizing, I'm struggling to understand if you're giving out bonus, the reward for it, for the organization meeting the objective or for the person meeting their objective. So I feel like I'm hearing a little bit of both.
So like I said, spot bonuses for people. This applies to the entire organization. I'm going to show you a little bit more about how that applies in just a second, because it's not. I haven't finished the story on it yet. And here we go. So if you've got somebody, this is your CEO right here, 180K, right? Their bonus could be 20% up to 100%, maybe even more than that, right? 100% of their salary, of their compensation. Whereas somebody that is like a frontline worker, let's say a senior frontline worker, maybe 5%. Whereas you might have somebody else that is a junior frontline worker, it's 3% of their incentivization, of their compensation. So, you can still, like I said, spot bonus people on these things, but for the most part, you're filling up the bonus pool. You're estimating the total bonus pool based on the percentage of these people's salary, which then figures, this is that bonus amount that that fills up this amount. So $292,000 right here. This was our bonus pool at Experience Care. So it's if we didn't meet these goals, then we released some of that accrued money back into the company. But if we met all the goals, like that was the amount we filled it to 100% and we distributed that money. So you're incentivizing people based on their roles and their experience and their their level, all sorts of things. Their what they're supposed to be doing at the company and their value.
So you don't connect the bonus to the OKRs at always. Only
No, I do so.
OKR.
So let's go back to that for a second. So in the OKRs, you're going to have some flavor of this stuff, right? Like your annual goals for your OKRs are going to be they're going to relate to these, or they're going to be these kinds of things, like whatever these things are for your business. But this way, because the executives are like, well, I'm making my bonus, they're gonna want those goals to be this stuff. So. Yeah, and there might be other stuff as well. If you have good team members, like even if if they're not being incentivized on something, and they've still, they've got a goal for this top level annual goal, they're still working towards making it. But I give you a 100% guarantee they're going to work on these a lot more. Go for it.
I don't mean to challenge, I'm just curious.
Yeah, go for it.
At the next slide, you're showing the percentages on the next slide. If I'm in this category, if I'm the CEO executive category where I'm incentivized at 50% and I'm making like, say $200,000, that's a big deal to get that 50% change. It's like, that changes my whole year.
Yep.
If I'm making $100,000 less and incentivized at 3%, at the end of the year, for the whole year, I get 100% of my goals and I show up with another like $2,800. I might be like, that's nice.
Yep.
So I wonder if that really drives a person who's on that entry level, because they might have impact. They might be able to really catch some stuff and do something with it.
You said you still have extra money for spot bonuses if you needed. The other piece is that, this is a good example, right? In this particular case, like this person they were not in a position where they could really have much impact. Like this was a company that had like, at this time, something like 70 people. This was a person that filled a very specific role. Even if they went above and beyond, they couldn't do that much more. Like there just wasn't, like they weren't gonna be able to impact the success of those goals one way or the other. So that's why it was. But as executives in your businesses, like your job is to figure these numbers out. Like it can be different. I do recommend I do recommend having standards on this. So for example, a director at 10%, an executive at 20% or more, a director at 10%, a manager at 5%, a frontline person at 3%, or something like that. Just figure out like generally what those are, because you don't want to have like Johnny at 15% and Susan at 8%, and they're really doing the same thing, because that sets you up for, especially in the US, that sets you up for some legal problems.
I guess maybe for some smaller businesses, but also actually for ours, we have, so the corporate goal, right, it's 50% of the bonus.
Okay.
And then 50% is actually the individual contribution bonus, right? That way, because, for example, let's say a content writer, he wouldn't be able to influence cost cutting, he wouldn't be able to influence reviews on Google, right? So that's where I would say, okay, like you have your OKRs, and therefore the bonus is linked to that. But obviously you want to be a team player, and therefore 50% of how the company performs will also apply to your other part of the bonus.
Gotcha. Cool. Everybody get that? You said no?
Yeah, I'm a little unsure whether that actually makes that huge difference, because it's really delayed reward.
Because of what?
It's like a very delayed reward compared to just telling someone that they did a really good job and that was kind of values.
But you still tell them every week whatever you want to tell them. But obviously you can't pay them off.
I'm just looking for like the size of the level, because I want to just do as little as possible and have the biggest effect, because I just can't do 50 days. So
you want to do this model once. That's it.
yeah, but like I actually do a lot of more stuff in the business than do a financial model, and then do the reward at the end of the year. I have like a bunch of things I do daily and talk to people that they have to do, and I'm like, I would be surprised, like except the sales guy who's really wants his money, I would be surprised if that, like, did you introduce this and that made a huge difference in motivation and they come up with ideas and so on? Or is it like
So keep in mind, what we're doing here is you're not necessarily pushing your lowest level people here. Like as you pointed out, we're talking about somebody who's going to get 3% of their compensation. You're not driving that person. You're not giving them 50% of their compensation. You're not giving them these big bonuses. What you're doing with this kind of system is you're driving executives, and executives then have the ability they have incentive for their teams to push things in the right direction. You're guiding the entire business. We're looking at this as an investor, not as an operator here. So if you want to give people bonuses that they're happy about right now, that it's on a more regular basis, have a larger amount of accrued capital for your spot bonus pool, and then just spot bonus people for doing a great job. But if we're talking about the holistic system, not the lower level individuals in the team.
It seems to be something that you usually do once the business reaches a certain level, and then you're more away from the day-to-day, and you can be busy with those things. Before that, I mean, if I'm busy with this stuff, and then our revenue goes from like this much to this much from month to month, like I have other problems to worry about, and I don't think that...
You see, if you never get out of the weeds, you never achieve the high stuff.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Get out of these last 2 months, and then revenue will fall like this, and I have to fire people because it actually runs structurally because of that.
Yes, so now you gotta start doing this first.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I tell you what. Let's get into the next section, and let me address that a little bit further.
It's definitely if I'm actually still at an operation and I can't do things, then the entire business explodes, and it doesn't matter what's in the spreadsheet.
Dominic, let me get on to the next section because I understand where you're coming from. I've been in the weeds so much, and I did it for so many years, and it wasn't like this was one tool that helped me get out of it. But the next piece was the major tool that helped me get out of it. Like it was like the next tool was like the big thing that I was like, cool, like I did all the brain work, I got all the stuff, and then the company started moving without me. So let me get to that. All right. So for those of you who don't have a forecast, I just wanted to give you like a overview of how to do this, but I think I'm going to skip this piece for right now. If you want to come back, like you'll have all the files. Like I'll give you access to the whole folder, so you'll have all of that. Because we only got an hour left, and I want to make sure that I go through this model with you. So here, go ahead and grab this one right here. If you need the URL, actually, is anybody here who can't get it from the QR code? I should have put the URL on there. So go ahead, if you've got it, if you got a computer, pull it up. If you don't, look at a friend's computer. I think everybody's sitting next to somebody who's got a computer in front of them. Or if not, Alexa, you're the only person who does not really, but I think you're fine. You've done this before. So, like I said, that one over there, and then down this one. We're going to take a look at this other one as well, if we have time. But this is just as a contrast, so you can see what a basic model looks like, and then if you have a model builder building it for you, like what they're going to give you. And so, because I want to give you this, like how I like having it done versus what a model builder is going to do for you. And then this way you can tell them how to change it so that it works for you. Because a lot of times when you're dealing with these model builders, they do things the private equity way, and it's just freaking hard to tell what the hell's going on. You know, maybe if Alexi's building it for you and he's got his 2,000 rows of variables right there at the top for you, that's one thing. But most model builders just build that stuff into the model, and then it's really hard to figure out what's going on. And I'll show you what I mean by that and what that looks like. All right. So, let's go through it. Yeah, I knew we didn't have March in there twice. Okay, cool. Good catch. Was it you caught that? Yeah. I was like, man, how the hell get March in there twice? Okay. So, this the summary is just looking forward from January forward as to this looking forward. We've got our revenues, cost of goods sold, gross profit, operating costs, and by the way, this is for a SaaS business, so there's no product, there's nothing like that. It's just manpower for the most part and revenue. And then you've got your operating cash flow, cash in, cash out, and your bank balance. And if you notice over here, we do start with a cash from financing at $5 million. So, so if we were to zero this out, you would see that our bank balance should drop pretty fast off of that. But this is an example of, say, a startup business. So we're putting $5 million in right out the gate. So Coming into the revenues tab, this is the way it's put together. So you can see it goes actually month by month in this particular case. I'm going to show you one that goes week by week as well in the FP&A one. But you can see like this is the signups, and then you can just see how if I was to come in here and just change like signups at the beginning of the first month to go to 500 because I did a whole pile of these kinds of talks, then let's see, there it goes. Then it's going to change right out the gate, and you can just see the effect of that moving forward month over month. Same thing with all of these different variables we have here. The way that I've built this particular one is that we've got signups, we've got customers MRR, the basic plan. Then if you come on down, you can see customers on the pro plan. And then we come down, we've got the enterprise plan. And then really, when you look at it, you've just got your ARPA, your MRR, new MRR, upgrades, expansion, lost, etc., and then month-over-month growth down at the bottom. And so you're just seeing like how these particular things modify things throughout. The kinds of assumptions you have in here is different for every different kind of business. Like there was a content site business that I was working on a model for where they don't see revenue until 7 months after an article is written. Like, because they would write an article and then it would then they would put their booking.com whatever on it, people would book it, and then about 7 months later after they paid and they've gone on their vacation, then they're seeing revenue from that. And so there's all sorts of different things that you'll do in these kinds of models to show we have this upfront cost here, revenue way out, or sometimes cost here, revenue immediately. Sometimes there was a travel site, a travel company I was looking at on one of these where it was like the EBITDA of the business was really not indicative of the growth of the business. And it was really, I was like, again, when he told me, I was like, I don't think that really applies. But then when he showed me, I was like, okay, it's really just really delayed is what it is. So for your businesses, it could be all over the place. But the idea, just to make sure we hammer on it one more time, is that you've got in this particular case, a product line being a basic plan is driven by the number of customers, the churn rate, how much money they're paying. Those are your three variables on that. And let me say, yeah, that's it. And whether they upgrade, downgrade, whether they stay or go, and how much money they're paying. So if you were to come in and say, like, at this point, we're going to raise prices by 10%, and you would just come in, let's say August of 22, we're going to do something like that, where we're going to, somewhere in this row right here, we would probably come in and say, like, okay, we're going to add prices, increase prices by X amount, change it in this area. I don't know where it's going to be in here, but somewhere in there. Then you would see the effect of that moving out from there. Now, it's really important. This is actually really, really important. So remember this. If you're starting to build in pieces into your spreadsheet like this, have a separate document. It's a Word document. It's like, at this place, I'm doing this. At this place, we're doing this. At this place, we're going to hire a person here, which hiring and firing is a little easier because it shows much easier in the spreadsheet. But if it's like, we're going to run a campaign, we're going to change prices, we're going to make this change, we're going to create this partnership, we're going to do whatever, have it in a separate document where you're writing that stuff down, and either which cell you're doing that, or what cell, what product line, and what date. Because otherwise you'll lose that stuff really fast. I can't tell you how many times I've been working on this stuff, and after, let me think, I don't know, like a day, I'll come back and I'll be like, like, what the hell did I do here? Like, why did this number change? Why did I put this thing in here? It's just make sure to note it really well as you're going through it. Cool. All right, questions?
Can you just do it with notes, maybe?
Say it again?
Can you do it with notes?
I used to, and I'd still get it lost because there's like a million cells in this thing. Yeah, like when you look at, like, even this one, which is a simpler version, there's still like you might be running this thing forward. In this case, you're running this thing forward to 2030 or 27 or 2030, something like that. You might have this is a really simple version of this. You can have a million cells in there. Which question?
Is there any kind of specific software that would help, maybe having something like context?
I have not found anything that does a great job. Alexi would probably know that better than me.
To be honest, I would stay away from software. Excel is the best tool for that, and Google Sheet. But you could put comments into cells, but it's kind of messy. But the way I model out, I actually have it all in just one sheet because that allows me to have visibility. For example, if I talk about, okay, my revenue is increasing by X, Y, and Z, I then have in the next section below my marketing plan, where I can see each budget for each channel and what the customer cost of acquisition is for each channel, which then I can sense check with my revenue forecast. And then I know, okay, if I have more revenue, if I'm driving suddenly, let's say tomorrow I want to in 2 months, I can start driving YouTube as a channel. That means I need somebody to help me on YouTube. Okay, I need a creative person, an editor, maybe a YouTube ad person. The hiring section in the model starts having these numbers as well. And so then I can kind of read it across.
Yep.
If you have your Word document, again, we're talking about, let's say, initially you just want to start somewhere, right? So I think this is totally good to have a Word document or Notion document, whatever, next to it. But if you become too big, then it's the fewer documents you have, the better.
Yeah. Now, so I also do bigger ones in line, but sometimes so first off, when I do the bigger, a really big model, and what he's talking about, everything on one sheet, I think it works a lot better in Excel to do it. Excel is just so much faster than Google Sheets. So if you're going to do it, if you're going to do something like that, that's really one sheet, massive document, do it in Excel. And I use this particular model here today because it's easier to break things up into different tabs and kind of explain how things are done. Okay. One other note. Somebody asked about commenting. What I will do is if I have something where I change something, I'll actually highlight it though. That is one thing I'll definitely do. I'll be like on this cell there's a change, so that I can just look at the whole thing and be like, okay, here.
Yeah. One more, let's say, pro tip is usually the hard codes should be in blue.
Yep.
The formulas should be in black, and your links to another sheet should be in green. But we're talking about the actual font size rather than the cell color.
So if you look at the more let's say the professional one that I've got, let's go to revenue document here. Oh, you know what? They changed it. Hold on one second. Oh, here it is. So this kind of thing. So there's the blue. This is my more professional style one that that he's talking about. This is if a model builder builds it, it's gonna look something more like this. It's actually not gonna be as pretty as this. My assistant didn't like the way that it looked, and she went back and she restyled it a little bit. So, excuse me. But you can see in here how you're opening and closing different areas in here. A lot of times if a model builder build it, it's gonna look like this. And actually, cases were here. Actually, let me find my. I don't want to dig into it too much. It's going to take too long. We got still a lot more to cover. All right, costing. Let's go over to costing. So in costing, for the most part, most businesses, your cost is your people. And so think about other costs as a percentage of revenue or a percentage of people costs. Let me actually come over to my to this one to show a little bit more robust view of this. So this is that view on that other one. All right, so something that we've got here is a start date and an end date. So you can see on here, it looks like it's, I don't know why this is there. But I like to have a start date and an end date for people because sometimes I know that I'm going to be taking somebody out, and I like to be able to plan for it right there. Whereas in my startup model, where did I put it? This one here, we just have start dates. So start date, end date. We still have our bonus pool over here, and then your base salary, and then you can just see how that flows out moving forward with all of these people. And then we're breaking these up into categories or departments. In this particular case, we just got G&A, R&D, sales and marketing, et cetera. We break up sales and marketing, customer success here. But really, all that you're seeing here is that it's just salaries moving forward. Like that's how it's put together. Down at the bottom, we start looking at things like travel costs and then just other costs as a percentage of, or in this case, other costs per employee. And then we've got down at the bottom just infrastructure as a percentage of MRR. That's where I was going with the percentage of. So a lot of times, like if you have hosting or you have, I don't know, like it depends on what, like some other customer costs, you're doing as a percentage of MRR. And then I like to have an additional infrastructure cost area for small business, so I can just kind of break it up and kind of figure out what that's going to look like. All right. Any questions on this stuff so far? Am I going too deep on this? Everybody feeling okay?
I love a freelancer who helps with the setup of the Excel sheets from the
Upwork. I've got a list of 3 or 4 people on Upwork that I've sent stuff to that are pretty good. So and they're not expensive, like $15 an hour out of Pakistan. Yeah, and some of them do a really, really excellent job. Like they're like ex-KPMG, and like they're excellent. And then the other piece is a hiring plan. So in this case, I've got a sales team hiring plan, but it's something that you might want to do a sales team hiring plan. You might just want to have just a headcount planner. The hiring plan here is done like this. You have X amount of new ARR, new annual recurring revenue. For every amount of new ARR you produce, you're going to hire 1 new person in this particular role. So for every, in this case, 150,000 that we produce, we're hiring 1 new account executive. And then they're going to spin up 25%, 50%, 70%, and then month 4, 100%, meaning their ability to produce revenue. And then for every 4 account executives, we've got 7 AEs per sales director, AEs per SDR, the first SDR director at 4 SDRs, maximum number of SDRs per director. So you just adjust those numbers and adjust how you're building out your sales team. But you can put together a whole other line over here about customer success, about engineers, about whatever else. And this just tells you like, okay, well, when I produce X number of dollars, time to get ready to start hiring my next person. So it makes that thought process a little bit easier. Or maybe you're doing great and you're like, okay, cool. Like instead of, we produce an extra $200,000 or $300,000 in revenue, we don't actually need them yet. Great, we've got money for other things, but this way at least you've got a good plan for it. And you can come back in your spreadsheet and modify things around and say, like, okay, instead of 150 at this time, it's going to be 200 or it's going to be 400 or whatever. And this way you can just see what that hiring plan looks like going forward. Questions? Feeling good? Everybody good? Anybody confused? Fantastic. That's so good. We're such smart people here. And that's how I put together, like this is a good view of a startup SaaS forecast. And then all of this, all this then comes together to show you what the entire business looks like going forward. You're pulling in your revenue from one, you're pulling in your costs from the other, you're pulling in, pretty much revenue costs and the cost, sales, hiring, that comes into costs. Push it all forward and you can see what the business looks like. Which question?
I was just going to share that I do a much lighter version of this. My business is smaller, and I kind of use this new profit first accounting, and I put it with similar thing where I've got it months out or even a year out into the future as a forecast.
Okay.
So it's just fewer things. It's for smaller teams. It's just less stuff going on. But it's the same idea.
Yeah, this is a good example. Doesn't have to be as complicated as this for everybody. The things that I really do like to have, like I said, are the thing that I find that is the same almost always across the board is in this cost area. Like I found that like maybe there are certain businesses that have high, maybe a product business has a lot more products you're selling, or for whatever reason you don't need employees or there are very many employees. But I find that it's almost always the same. So, there you go. Question?
So how do you use this? Like you make the forecast and then every month you check it, and then there's going to be difference with the forecast.
We do a variance versus. So great question. I'm going to address that at the end.
From there, so this
Okay.
is next here. This next week here, right?
You can actually.
And then I
look.
Maybe I should just do it. Maybe we should do it.
It's just the way it's
All right, we got starting back now, y'all. Y'all ready? All right. So for anybody that doesn't have any kind of forecast at all in place, there's a document in here called my super simple growth rate calculation model. And it just kind of helps you think about this stuff on a really, really broad scale. There's a yearly scale, because I just had this this thing in here where you can enter your monthly revenue, enter your average unit price, number of executives, workers, etc., and just figure out, like if you're shooting for this much this year, etc., generally, what does it look like for your growth rate, the number of people, etc. Just to get you like a really super broad idea. So for Hani, or for anybody else that just doesn't have any kind of model at all, any kind of thought, any kind of numbers, you can put stuff in here. It's a super broad model. It probably doesn't apply to most businesses because it's so broad, but you got something you can play with. And if you play around with that and then you want to come and talk to me about it later, come and talk to me about it. Okay. All right, let's talk about cascading goals, because this is actually, I can't believe we talked about modeling for an hour and a half. We didn't. We talked about it for an hour and a quarter. I go so much slower than I think I'm going to go. I thought we'd be done by now. Okay. Cascading goals. How many people here have a goal system for your business where every week people in the business are entering how well they're doing against those goals? 1, 2-ish. Okay. What kind of goal system are you using?
Basically, I just have the forecast, I have broken it down in weekly goals, and people add their numbers, compare them to return. So it's not like an OKR, not really.
Okay, cool. And then what kind of system do you have?
I'll be lightweight OKR, big company goal, and then cascades every individual, their particular goals relate to the big company goal.
Perfect. So I'm going to give you guys some. Is it pretty well implemented at your companies? Is it working?
I think so.
You think so? Okay,
To
cool.
the point that it's always present and people know what their opinion is, and they seem to be working on that.
Perfect. Hopefully I can give you guys a little bit to add to this, and I've got some files that you guys will get when it's all done, so if you want to use it, it's there for you. Okay, actually let me go back to this. We talked about what strategic decisions drive growth in our forecast. That was like, what are we doing that's going to make a difference? Now, how do we implement those things? We talked about the people costs. Actually, what did I just do? Oh yeah, in the model, we just reviewed those things. Now we're going to talk about how we're going to implement those into those goals. So I always think about distilling out the really long-term goals. So if you don't have a 5 to 10 year revenue and EBITDA goal, I recommend putting something together. Something that tells you where you're going to be out in the future. Now, it may be that your plan is to sell this business in 2 to 3 years. That's fine. Still put together a long-term goal for whoever's going to buy this business. You want them to think about like where they're going to be further out. The team needs to be thinking about this. Part of leading a team is showing people what the future looks like. And so giving them that long-term vision of where the business is going. And by the way, I've got a whole other set of things that we could talk about with this, as far as like what the culture is going to be, what the environment is going to, what the market is going to think about your business, what your employees are going to think about your business, what you're going to think about your business. There's all of these other things that you can do to plan out this long term, this picture of the future, the 1 year out. So let's say 2025 picture of the company. But then this quarter, this week right now, that's what we're going to be talking about. Actually, these three are what we're going to be talking about next. All right. Now, I like to have this here because this is kind of a DCer list of roadblocks. I see this in other businesses as well, but I just want to just throw this out there and just kind of ask the question, among all of these items, how many people have at least a couple of these problems? Take a second. Raise your hand if you got a couple of these problems. Now, I definitely do, by the way. All right. Which problems do you have?
Definitely accountability systems, ownership, general disorganization. That's a common thing. Not clearly defining where we're going.
Okay.
That's a lot of these. Yeah.
Perfect. So if you have a forecast and you have these goals, we're going to solve that, and we're also going to solve that accountability problem.
We have a forecast, we just don't follow
You know,
it.
all right. So once you follow your forecast and you use it to build your goals, and you put in place a system like I'm going to show you, we're going to get rid of that accountability problem. One of the biggest things that this system fixes is accountability and ownership. Like that's actually the biggest piece of the entire thing, shining a light on where there's problems within the business. All right, who else raised their hand? Everybody? Come on. All right, let's do Dennis in the back.
What problems do?
Yeah, what name 2 of them or 3 of them that you got on this list?
So accountability systems and ownership, or like right now the problem is like I'm solo scorecard OKRs and I'm just getting my business partner 1 year later to adapt it and improve it. So that was a good transition phase. Shiny object, a bit less, but it's still happening. Definition of where we're going. So right now I have, once again, business partner. He's like, oh, I want to sell in 2 years, 3 years, for 20 million. Well, what does that look like?
Yeah, how are we going to get there?
Yeah.
If you have your forecast, you can figure out exactly what that, how many widgets you got to sell to get there.
Exactly, because I was like, we need to.
Yep.
have X from here.
All right, so one more person. Who else? Problem on here. What you got?
Well, I think staying focused on a high performance, low cost business where we can find that high performance, low cost area and then want to add a feature, do something special for what seems like a special client, or just kind of having that and then moving away from it again and again and again.
I find that high performance, low cost business, this is actually a roadblock. Just generally having a high performance, low cost business. Because what I see is you have these high performance, low cost businesses, a lot of times in software, services or software. You're outsourcing everything to the Philippines, or you've got developers that are okay, pretty cheap, but they're doing a good enough job, and the company's growing. But then what happens is, as the company starts to grow, you need higher cost people, and that's a jump that I see a lot of DCers having a hard time with. Is that they've been operating cheap for so long, they don't know what it means to step into a bigger, more corporate style business. Where I think that actually Amar and I had this conversation where he was like, my next hire is going to be somebody that's going to be like 120 to 150K, and I've never hired anybody like that ever. And that's the jump from going from a high performance, low cost business to a more sustainable long-term business. And a lot of DCers have this problem.
What do you mean by prejudice against professionalism? Because I think we have that, but it's just like, how does it show up usually?
So not wanting to pay a professional manager. So for example, like you need somebody who, maybe not you, but like the proverbial you, needs somebody who has never been an entrepreneur, who has always worked in corporate, who is a high-performing corporate employee. They don't know what it means to be an entrepreneur, but when they come to work, they wear a tie. When they come to work, they have very clear expectations on what HR is going to handle for them. They have very clear expectations on what kind of benefits they're going to receive for this business, because that's the environment they're used to being in. And they act a particular way that sometimes grates on your nerves, because that's the world that they're from. But they're high performance. And the fact is, like that piece that grates on your nerves about like the way that what they want from HR is really important because that's going to keep you from getting sued later. But for us running kind of bootstrap businesses in a lot of cases, we're like, let's just go. We don't have time for this shit. But you have to and that's like, I can't tell you, like working in private equity, I smashed against that wall. Like, cause I was used to like, just go. And I hit that wall at 70 miles an hour. And I had to stop and rethink a lot of things. And it really pissed me off. But if you're gonna grow a big business, it's really important. And you gotta step back and let go of that negativity towards it, accept that that's what business is. And in some cases, like, as founders, that's a good time for a lot of founders when they're scaling up to where everybody needs to fall into that professional realm. Sometimes that's the time when you got to step back and put in a professional CEO as well. But that's what I see as that prejudice against professionalism. And it is a pain in the ass, by the way. Any other questions on this?
A bit on the same topic, there are some people and gurus and evangelists that push very agile way of working, and would indeed be very prejudiced or just advocate against some form of planning that they makes it seem more.
Yeah.
So how do you make your own opinion about this? How do you find the right path? Some people would take, for example, most companies as example of extreme agility at scale. But Apple would claim they are the largest startup ever. There is a book about insane simplicity and what they incorporate. But I guess they still have some planning potential. So how do we know the trust of what's doable or not, and how do we decide what we do that makes sense and reassess all the time?
So I think that's a culture building question. But it's not something I have time to talk about today with all the stuff that we're doing. I'm happy to talk about it afterwards. I have a lot to say about it.
What's the ground trust basically that you need to know as failures?
Well, one of the things that you can do to grow trust is actually do the things that we're about to talk about here. Because once people see you're giving them the vision of the future, you've created this financial plan, you know where the company is going. We're about to put in place goals now to help people get to this bright future that you're promising them. That people see you as that leader when you give them the vision of the future and show them the steps to get there. And this was something that I didn't understand about leadership for a long time. That all of this work on planning as a CEO is what makes you such a good leader. It's not just the charisma you have. It's not just your ability to talk to someone and make them feel better or get them to do something they don't want to do, but it's actually the presentation of the future and the steps to get there. All right, so what I was going to say about all of this stuff is that these standard roadblocks, pretty much all of them, can be overcome by what we're about to go over right now. We are going to go over time. There's no way to finish by 12 o'clock. If you got to be somewhere, I understand, and this will be recorded. You can look back. If you want to stick around, I'll go through the entire presentation. I don't go to Janine's party until like 3 o'clock. So we have the room until 1. Okay, so I see this all the time. So having to do with all those problems, because you have these problems, and then because of this, people are all over the place. We talked about shiny object syndrome. We talked about general disorganization. We talked about all these things. We have like different people working in different directions all the time, but not necessarily going towards the main goal for the business. But then once you have all the goals in place and people are being held accountable to them on a weekly basis, every single week for every single team, all of a sudden everything starts driving towards those goals. And that can apply to a small business or to a big business. Same exact thing. All right. Now this is probably one of the most important lessons I learned in business. As a CEO, as the leader of your business, your job is setting the goals that move the company forward and communicating them. And then success is based on the percentage of the team's goals that are accomplished, is not you doing the job. So, and this is kind of speaking to what your question was, Dominic. You're like, well, the thing went up here and I got to take care of that. In a very small business, you're right, you do have to take care of that. But what I would recommend you do is to kind of try to split yourself in half, and half of you think of yourself as an investor and look at what's happening, and the other half be that operator who's doing the thing. So, you still have, like in a lot of businesses where you're working in the business, You still have to work in the business for as long as you can to get out of working in the business. But as soon as you get to when you elevate yourself to a certain point, your success is not based on your work. It's based on your team's work. And you should always think about it like that. Your success is based on the team, not you. All right, so working with OKRs. This is the way it works. This is for a football team. So the general manager, they have two main things. Their main objective is to make money for the owners. That's what they're trying to do, make money. How much money, I don't know, it depends on the team. What's the best ways to do that? Win the Super Bowl, fill the stands to 88%. So win the Super Bowl is going to come over to the head coach. Their objective is win the Super Bowl. Their key results, 200-yard per game passing game, third-ranked defense in the NFL, 25-yard punt return average. So they're going to figure out, like, what are the key things that we're going to do that's going to help us win the Super Bowl? Then this is going to get passed down to these teams. So, like, defense, third-ranked defense in the NFL, they're going to have a whole set of things that they're going to have to do to drive it, to hit that objective. And then people on their team are going to have individual goals that they have to meet to drive that. And this is how you laser focus a business. Everybody, like, even though the, I don't know who it is on the defense team has this less than 100-yard passing game per game, like, all they're looking at is, I got to block. I got to block the best I can, right? Is that right? Less than, 100-yard passing game per game. So they got to block. Their job is to block. That blocker, that lineman, isn't thinking about making money for the owners, but they're being driven to block as best they can. Whoever's managing that person is working on their blocking as best they can, but that blocking is what's driving towards this right up here. But and so when you do something like this, you go back to this. Everybody starts driving forward. The people at the bottom are working on things that drive the entire company forward. All right, and this is how I usually go about doing it. So, and y'all have access to the sheet when we get done. So I have the most important goal. So actually, it says 23, but I redid it so it says 24. If it says 23 anywhere, just change it. All the formulas should work for 24 now. So Q1, actually, let me start down here. So I've got annual goals. All of our quarterly goals roll up to our annual goals. But with our quarterly goals, I usually start, when I'm implementing the system, I start for this quarter. Right now, what's going on? And usually what I do is I start with what's the biggest problem for this quarter without looking forward to the end of the year. The first quarter, I just deal with what are the problems right now. And that gives the people that I'm helping implement this for time to get all of their annual goals really worked out. If they've already got annual goals, or if you've already got annual goals, you've already got everything put together, you've already thought through this kind of thing, then you can be more strategic in getting the first quarter done. But it doesn't matter that much because for almost every team that I've implemented this for, it takes a minimum of 3 quarters to really get it going. So better part of a year to really get it in place and to get your team thinking about this stuff the right way. Everybody doing good? Are you feeling all right? Yeah? Okay? All right. So I put in, what is the most important top level goal right now? So what's the most important top level goal right now for this quarter, for this coming quarter, for this quarter for your company?
Make more money.
Make more money. How much money?
In the quarter,
200. So grow revenue by $200,000. Okay. And then what are the things that you're going to do that are leading indicators that you're going to do that?
We're investigating the SEO strategies.
All right, investigating is not going to drive revenue. What are you going to do that's going to drive revenue? Yeah, that investigating might drive revenue for end of Q2 by the end of next year. What are you going to do this quarter that's going to drive $200,000 in revenue?
Let's say direct reach out to new prospects who are identical to our best clients.
Perfect. All right, direct reach out. How many people do you have to direct reach out to?
Probably 50 to 100.
50 to 100 per week, per day?
Quarter.
Per quarter. Do you have a number that shows you per number of outreaches, this is our conversion rate?
No. Well, yeah, in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, we're at something like 12%.
12%. So for every, what is that, 5 for every 50? Sorry, yeah, 10, yeah. So if you reach out to 100, then you're going to get 10. And that's conversion rate, or is that conversion rate?
It's a conversion rate, but we probably only need like 4 or 5.
Okay, cool. So then the way you would do something like this is 200K, the outreach to X number of people. Who owns that in your company?
The marketing.
All right, so there's the marketing director. They would have the number. So instead of 20K, it would be like 100 people. Each week, you would break down exactly. Actually, I've got it done right here. So there it is. Top level thing. This is there, and then who owns it? What's their target? What's the baseline? Where are they at so far for the quarter? And then what is their actual? And then the percentage automatically is created. And then every single week, how many did they actually reach out to? And are they on track, off track, or is the thing done? I don't like to have something that says pending or at risk or anything. It's either you're doing it or you're not doing it. Some people like to have like an at-risk thing. Like you're either doing the job or you're not doing the job. And that's it. And so the trick here is to have them put it in every single week on Monday. How many did you do last week? How many outreaches did you do? What was your success rate on them? I'd probably have like a success rate because maybe your conversion rate's gone down. You have to do more than you think. Or I would just say like instead of doing 100, you can do 150 because this way we can guarantee we're going to make this number. And then are you on track or off track, which is based on your percentage of your target and the time. So like if you're 50% through the quarter and you're 10% done with this job, you are off track. And what I would tell you on this is that for you as leaders, the thing that you really got to know about your team is that people don't like to not show up and do the job. And so very often people will say that they're on track for this and they're not on track. And you'll come down to like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the end of the quarter. You got a head? I got the recording for you.
Yeah, sounds good, yeah.
Cool.
I'll shoot you a message shortly later.
All right, excellent.
Jason.
Yep, no worries. So it'll be 2 weeks before the end of the quarter, and all of a sudden, everything turns to off track. And you're like, what the hell just happened? So throughout the quarter, it's so important that you and your managers are on top of these people, making sure that they're actually putting the real numbers in. I can't tell you how often that happens because they just don't want to. They don't want to look bad. But when you come into a meeting and you're publicly like, look, this is off track, move it to off track now. All of a sudden, like the eyes of the company are on this one person who's got an off track item, and for the most part, it's a self-correcting system because that people see this red. And let's say Johnny is like, well, shit, red thing. I don't want to be red. Everybody else is green. I got to fix this thing now. And people that weren't doing it before, all of a sudden the light is on them. And then also, when you have those underperformers in your team that maybe you didn't see before, maybe like they were kind of like sliding by, all of a sudden they can't escape from the light. All of a sudden, everybody sees them. And because it's done publicly, you can't escape. And the other piece is this comes back to hiring and firing. When you have a consistent underperformer that one day is there, everybody knows hadn't been making their goals for a quarter or 2 quarters, the next day is gone, there's this sigh of relief because people are like, all right, cool. Now we're going to make our goals for the year. Now we're going to get our bonuses. Now we're going to continue to grow as a business. What was the question? We had a question in the back.
Oh,
Yeah.
actually, when do you plan your next quarter? How far in advance? Is it like monthly before it's done?
Yeah, I usually start doing it about 2 weeks before. Like 2 weeks before the quarter starts, I start telling people like, hey, don't forget, you're going to have your next quarter stuff. Make sure. It also depends on the size of the business. Like if it's a small business and you can have like 2 or 3 goals, you as the CEO can just come in and be like, knock out all the top level stuff. And this is actually super important. For those, let me see if I got it. For these secondary level items, if I don't own this, if it's a reasonable sized business where I don't own everything, or if I've got a team and somebody else owns it, I don't tell them what that is. They got to tell me. They have the objective. I set the objective. We talk about whether that objective can actually be made. Like, can we actually do that $200,000 this quarter? And if the answer is yes, you tell me what the objective is, or what the key result is. This is one of the most important things. And then the other piece is, as the leader in the business, you can veto it, but you can't tell them what it is. If they're doing something that doesn't make sense, because a lot of people, they're not thinking like a leader, they're not thinking like you're thinking, they're thinking like, oh, I'm gonna do my job. And we need to set goals for the future, not like you're just gonna do the same thing that you do every day. Like this is one of the biggest problems. You can veto that, but they gotta create it, because at the end of the quarter, what you want is to be able to hold people accountable. And if you impose that thing on them, they're gonna be like, well, I didn't make this goal. Or they're gonna feel like I didn't make this goal. But if they set the goal for themselves, and you're just saying, look, I didn't make the goal for you. You told me you were gonna do it. Now you can hold their feet to the fire. It's really important. What was the question? You have a question? No, yes.
How do you connect it to scorecard? Because to me it looks a lot like a scorecard. So is it like the same number, or do you use it?
This is looking forward. This is like how we're gonna do it.
The weekly check.
Yeah, so on a scorecard, usually what I'm looking at on the scorecard is lagging indicators. So these are like, for the most part, once again, we're looking at like, how many phone calls are you gonna make? Like, how many phone calls did you make this week? Whereas and so, in some ways you can say it is kind of a scorecard, but for the most part, this is why I do this.
Scorecard, like final results, and then you have to read scorecards.
Exactly. So on the like, if you have something like this that's really good, that's in place, that has all of your leading indicators on there, like how many phone calls did we make this week, and what's our goal for those phone calls? That's, like I said, the leading indicators. Lagging indicators, like how much revenue did we generate, how many sales did we get, what is our MRR, what is our NPS score, etc. Those are generally things that I put onto the scorecard, because this way we can see the trend of lagging indicators. And that's why I do that scorecard last. And I think this is much more important, because this is what's pushing the company forward. Cool. Questions on this so far? I'm going to keep going a little bit more.
What is under method?
Under method? So so you might have the sum of these numbers. So like, like this plus this plus this plus, and that might be the actual here becomes the sum. Or you might just say like, this is this week's number of calls. So maybe you're not trying to hit a total number, you're trying to hit a consistent number, in which case you might use most recent. The reason I like using a spreadsheet for this rather than a software system is because sometimes you come up with weird metrics on this stuff. And sometimes you have to put things together that are just different. And then the other piece is that you can build in other connections to other systems to a spreadsheet, so you can automatically fill these numbers sometimes. So, I like using a spreadsheet a lot more in that way. What's the question?
So my cascading system is OKRs, right? So similar, but I have only 3 objectives personally. 2 are usually corporate, 1 is, let's say, personal, whatever. And each objective is like, objective and then 3 key results.
Yep.
Objectives is usually what do I want to achieve, and then the key result is how do I get there.
Yep.
Right? And ideally it's all quantified as well. How many, because I can see it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a template, but like how many?
Great question. So for small business, 1 to 3, max 3, max 4, like max 4. And then and like on a really big business, say if you're 2,000, 3,000, not really big, but a big business, 2,000 people, you might have up to 7 in a quarter.
Like for you as a CEO?
Oh, no. Like so so objectives are for the company. The key results, are for the people. For me as a CEO, I like to have 0. I don't put anything down for myself.
Okay, got it. Because so again, there's no right and wrong, right? But like basically you can say you as a CEO, you are the company.
Yep.
Therefore there are, let's say, 3 objectives. And everything else, and every other person has also 3 objectives.
You
cascade down, so to say.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about that, because let me go into, let me show you in here. So for example, so you might have the top level objective is grow revenue by 10%. Sorry, you might have, I'm sorry, not objective. Let me do it like this. do this real quick. So let's say that the goal here was his goal of
Let's say grow revenue by 200K in Q1, right?
by 200K. Yeah.
For example.
So exactly, and we're looking at Q1 24 here, so I guess it would be Q4 23, but whatever. So what were the things that you said you needed to do on there to grow your revenue by 200K?
Make contact with X number of prospects similar to their client. It's like an ICP.
Okay, prospects. What else?
In terms of making sales.
Yeah, there's probably more than just that item.
Yeah, I already made some things up. I mean, upselling
Upsell.
current clients to higher levels of software.
How many current clients?
How many of them? I'd have to be thoughtful about what level they're already at.
Just random number, 10. Okay. Upsell 10 current clients to
Higher tier.
higher to, I'm gonna say like blank tier.
I represent a pretty standard like SaaS, enterprise SaaS.
Okay.
So like whatever you imagine enterprise SaaS to be, that's what it is in the model.
Gotcha. So you got upsell, you got that. What else? Do you need to generate content to do that? What else do you need to do that?
I probably need to generate the offer, their offer.
Clear offer for upsell. Oops. All right. So let's go with those three right now. So who's going to own who's your sales director? Give me a first name. Tim. All right. Who's the upsell? That's going to be an account management person. So who's your head of account management?
Could be Sarah.
Sarah. Okay. Who's your director of demand generation or marketing that's going to be generating these offers? Chris? All right. There you go. So those are the three people. That's what they've got to do. And then in this particular case, this would be something like $150. So it says $150, but let's make this just a number. So 150, upsell 10, so that's going to be 10, generate, and then this one is going to be 100%. So they've got to, on this one now, let's go take a look at this 150, and this is kind of the question about how do you break it down. That's going to answer your question from earlier. So let's go to the sales. Make contact with 150 people. So he's going to have. This now becomes the number one objective for the sales department. Make contact with 150 prospects. Prospects. And how's he going to do this? He's going to create a lead list.
Yeah, it's going to need a lead list, it's going to need a plan.
Lead list. Let's see, does he have sales team members?
Probably.
Okay,
In
so,
this case, no. I would say no.
okay, so create a leads list, and then they're going to have to outreach to the leads or test it or whatever those things are, right? And then, let's say the manager's not doing that. You got a VA, Timmy, who's doing the create the leads list. You're going to have, some outreach or some testing on it that's going to be somebody else on the marketing team maybe. So even though there's a sales job, you might have a marketing team member on it. So let's just go with Susan. And then let's see, that leads list is going to be 100%, would be the job on there. And then over here, you're just going to have that, they're 10% done, they're 20% done, they're 30% done, etc. But every single week on Monday, their job is to come in here and put down the number that they've got. Because you're going to have that leadership meeting Monday afternoon, and you want to look and say, is anybody missing something? Why didn't you put your number in there? Are you on track or are you off track for getting this thing done? You're on track. Fantastic. And that keeps everybody accountable. It's a 1 hour meeting. It's pretty easy. People know what they need to do, and all of a sudden, the underperformers, that light is shown on them. They can't escape from it. All right, let's go back over to here real quick. All right, and then this is the how-to on this. So at the beginning of that meeting, review last week's assignments. So I'm going to skip this one for right now and come down to this one, and then we're going to go back to the end. So what are the weekly goals that are off track? If something is on track, we don't look at it. It's on track. We don't talk about it. We don't look at it. We don't spend time on it. We don't need to talk about what the company did. We just need to talk about what's not working. So we only look at off-track items. If there's no off-track items, that meeting is done. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you next week. As a leader in your business, I strongly recommend you look at the date and how far along they are. Like, are you actually on track? You say you're on track, but man, people put that on track and then they turn it off at the very end, and it happens all the time. Don't let the culture of the company accept that. And then we're going to have a conversation about how to get those off-track items back on track. That's like, this is the most important thing. The whole entire team, like you might have a sales problem. We didn't make this many calls. All right, cool. Why? Because you're doing something else, because you were sick, because you took a day off, because whatever. Who can help this person get it back on track? Do you need an accountability person? Is Susan from marketing going to call you every single day to see how things are going? Are you not able to do it? Do we need to bring somebody from customer success to come in and start making calls for you? What do we need to do as a team to get this thing back on track? And that's what I was saying about those incentives, about like, why are we incentivizing everybody? Because maybe it's a frontline person in support who starts making some sales calls this week or next week or whatever it may be. Maybe it's a salesperson who's blown away their quota. They're doing amazing. They have a break for whatever reason, and product is having some problem, and they actually need to get that salesperson in to listen to some of these meetings with customers and to get them up to speed on their goals. It's a team effort, and bringing your team together is also one of those other ways to be an amazing leader, because all of a sudden people see you not siloing people, but bringing everyone together to accomplish this major goal. Cool. So conversations on how do we fix things and how do we reallocate resources to meet all of these goals every single quarter. And then assignments, this is a really important thing, assignments to the team members to get the off-track items on track. I put it in Asana, and I just have like my leadership meeting. Item. We all agreed that Susan's doing this, Johnny's doing this, so-and-so's doing this, to get these off-track items back on track by next week. Maybe it's a 3-week goal, but you're going to show me progress by next week. And so at the beginning of the following week, we review the last week's assignments. Did you do your work, yes or no? And once again, this is where you find your underperformers. The people that consistently don't get their stuff done that they said they were going to do, you see where those underperformers are. And honestly, the rest of your team sees where the underperformers are as well. And now you have the opportunity to start either put in place a performance improvement plan where you can get them back on track, or maybe they need to leave. And once you have that process in place, all of a sudden the company just starts moving on. The other piece of this, going back to all of this here, is that once you have your financial goals, once you have all of this stuff in place, once you're not the owner on any of these, I wish Dominic was here because this is the part that he needed. Once you're not the owner on anything in here, what are you doing? Like, now you can really be the brains. Now you can be the head accountability person. Now you can be you've planned everything out for the quarter. Everything is moving. Everything is being held on track by this team and by this system. Now you're in a position where you really can start stepping away from the business and really being more of an investor in the business. And you can put in place a real CEO, because now they have a structure to use within there that's just going to run this whole thing, or a general manager or whatever it may be. But really, your genius is put in place up front in the planning, in the strategy, in the financial planning, building out these goals, helping the team understand how to get all this stuff done, holding them accountable, and then you're good. Don't give yourself any goals, and there's actually not that much work to do. It takes some time to get there, but once you get there, like, you're set. Question?
How do you differentiate the roles of the CEO and the COO based on these goals? once the goals are set for all the team, is who is gonna actually keep everyone accountable?
The COO keeps, right? In my organizations, the COO keeps everybody. Like I am the head accountability person. If the COO is having some problems with person, then I'll step in. Like if she generally I work with female COOs, but if she's having like a consistent problem with someone, we'll have a conversation about it, and maybe I'll have a conversation with that person. But for the most part, I'm much more of a visionary CEO. Like working on minutia, day-to-day stuff gets me really bored. Like this is one of the reasons this system works really well for me, is because I can put all of my energy in at the beginning of the year and then once per quarter and knock everything out. And then that COO, that day-to-day, that person that loves to get in the details and grind, they can get in the details and grind and grind and grind and grind. They just love that. And they know what they have to do and what success looks like because they're looking at this board, and they can make sure that when people are having trouble on minutia in there, they get in and they play around and figure out how to get that solved.
So while you have this deep focus moment, you try to make all these models like once a year, once a quarter, etc. Your CEO is going to put all of this focus or her focus on keeping everyone accountable throughout the quarter. It's your job as a CEO. Then where do you put your focus outside of these modeling and strategy times?
Well, I like to take a break and go to the beach and play beach volleyball. And
I would say you have much more time to think how to grow, and how to bring additional business.
Exactly. So the reason I was actually talking about the beach is specifically that, because when I step away and I'm not in the business, I'm not working there, my brain makes those connections. And I'll be out, like I'll read a book, or I'll be at coffee, or I'll be meeting a DCer, or we'll be talking about stuff. Like that's when the best ideas happen, because all of a sudden you see this connection and you're like, oh my God, like if we connect here and here, that's another $1 million. And that's one of the things I think a CEO should spend a lot of time doing. The other part is you got to remember, as a CEO, one of the most valuable things you bring to your business is relationships and connections. Like how many times have you sat there spinning in circles for months trying to figure out a solution where you meet somebody who just has the answer? Like just getting out there and meeting people, doing things like this is like the most valuable thing you can do as a CEO after you have this kind of stuff set up. Because that just propels your business so much faster. So thinking, making connections, going to parties, having a good time, spending time with your family, watching YouTube videos, listening to me talk. This is the most valuable thing you can do. What was the question? Every time we had an NPS survey that was a 1-star rating, I personally called that person. And that made a massive difference. And then
People actually, like, it's fine if it's a 1-star rating, because like we have, I think it's a selection wise, very good NPS scores, but not from everyone. So
Yep.
my guess is the ones that are not responding are not happy. But
yeah, so we had so much on this, like we had so many statistics on this, and it was so important that everybody was happy. That was the support. The one you were just looking at was support. If somebody wasn't happy with support call, they got a call from me. But very, very, very few. I think that the whole time I was there, we had like 4 or 5 1-star reviews on support.
So you call the client?
I called the client directly. Yep. And then in our marketing team, we had a whole pile of other stuff. But really what I was getting to is that the entire company could see these monetary metrics every single week. So for every one of those teams, everybody looked at this stuff. And that was really important because they could see how they were doing, tracking towards their incentives and tracking towards the goals of the company and what all of this looked like. So transparency was something that was really, really high up on the values. And I think it made a massive difference in trust and leadership and our ability to push the company forward. So, but end of the day, where I was going with this is that was an advanced team. Everybody there was nobody in that team that was making less than $50,000 a year. The average person was making closer to $90,000, and a lot of people were in the hundreds of thousands, or in the between $100,000 and $200,000 a year. These were professionals that knew what they were doing, so we were able to have a much more advanced scorecard. They understood all of that. On other teams that I've worked with, it was just a revenue, sales, conversions kind of scorecard. So it depends on what your company is, what you're doing, but having people see it was super, super, super beneficial. All right. Like I said, scorecards was easy because after you covered all the other stuff, then it's quick. But I wanted to cover one last piece. I wanted to cover this objective investing real quick. So when you're an investor, you think about how much money is this going to cost? How long is this going to take? What are the chances things are going to go wrong? How much money will I make? What's the IRR, internal rate of return on the investment? If I'm looking at like a debt deal, this is what I'm looking at right here. When I'm looking at a business that I'm running, this is what I'm looking at right here. And I so strongly recommend that you guys do exactly the same thing. Because if you were, let's say you were going to invest in my business, this is what you would want to know. So why aren't you asking the question for your business? So, no worries. All right. And I always say this: if you invest in Google, you're not going to go over to the Googleplex and like get a desk and start working. You'd be like, how much money am I going to make? Like that's the question. Same thing with your businesses. So what I recommend is that you have your team, not you, put together a monthly financial call. So that what it means is your COO, some of the executives, you're going to be there, but really they're reporting up to you. So now you're starting to split yourself in half. You're half an investor and you're half a CEO. And you're going to have the team tell you this stuff. The reason that having the team tell you this stuff is important is because it starts having them think like you. Like you're looking at these big picture things. When your COO is like, oh, I got to report on P&L. Oh, I got to report on 13-week cash flow. Like, what the hell is that? Like, oh, I got to tell you how much, all these conversions. Well, hell, like, who's the marketing person? Get them in here and tell this guy what's going on. And so what it looks like is something like this. And by the way, sorry, I skipped something. When that happens, that COO and the marketing manager and that sales director are all of a sudden having to think like the CEO. That influences their ability to start setting goals differently, to think about the business differently, to think about how they're going to grow things differently. This is one of the reasons it takes 3 quarters, because it takes them time to actually grow into that mindset. All right, so this is the way we do it. I know Alexi is totally bored because he's seen this 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, but everybody else, you've got your forecast. This is your budget. You've got your actual, what you did this month or this quarter. I like to do it monthly. So this is the actual, this is your budget, this is your variance. What you want to see as the investor here is zeros all the way down. You want to see, I was perfectly aligned to my budget. I predicted the future perfectly. And when you don't predict the future perfectly, why didn't you predict it? And so like a lot of times we have this set of things that the team prepares ahead of time for us that says, this is why we didn't predict it perfectly. This is what went wrong in our predictions. When you do this kind of exercise with your team, the team starts thinking about like, oh, we need to be better at this. Like next time we do this kind of thing, we need to bring that down, or we need to bring that up, or whatever. But it starts getting them to think like the investor in the business as well.
And this is also very, very important, because if you do ever want to get an investor, the investor will do the same to you. So you might want to first do it to your other employees before other people start doing it to you.
Yeah, and this is also where predictability comes into play. That if a new investor comes in, and by the way, keep in mind, as your businesses grow, like really grow, let's say you start hitting 10, 20, 30, $50 million. In the 10 to $100 million range, a lot of businesses start coming into this area where they have to bring in additional capital. Like that's when working with private equities becomes really, really powerful, because now you need massive investments in order to grow to the next level. Like your revenue is doing this, but all of a sudden you're realizing we're going to hit this cap and we're going to have a hard time, and maybe we're going to start sinking, or other competitors are going to overtake us, or we're going to have to sell. There's a really good book called No Man's Land that talks about that.
That's great.
Yeah, like so anybody whose business really, you're looking at growing a high impact business that's gonna that's gonna hit those big numbers, read that book No Man's Land. And it talks about that gap in the middle, how there's a whole bunch of businesses on the middle and just a few way up at the top and just a handful that are traveling through that middle no man's land and what it takes to go through that middle area. But that's when involving private equity becomes the tool in your tool set that you have to take advantage of. When you show private equity zeros down the line right here for X number of years, they're gonna be like, cool, how much money do you need? And you're gonna get great terms on that money because they're gonna be like, these guys know how to predict the future. They know how to run a business. Make sense? And I know it seems like something in some cases is way out there, but you prep for it now, it makes a massive difference when you get to that point.
So
All right.
that's directly connected to your documents, ideally. I guess if you don't want to spend too much time inputting stuff.
Say it again?
It's directly connected to the model and to the score.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I have a VA, I have an executive assistant doing all of it. It takes her, like, after we got it all set up, I would say it takes her about between 1 and 3 hours to have the whole thing done. Yeah, and she would put together a presentation, like a 15-slide presentation that had the entire thing. And yeah. And she would pull reports. She had like an SOP that she wrote for doing the entire thing. She would pull reports from the finance system. She would pull reports from different areas. I'm actually going to show you a little bit more about what that looks like in a second. But you can see, like, once again, revenue, operating expenses, and here we go. So let's take a look at that board meeting. All right, so here we go. So mission, I always like to put the mission and vision first, just so I like to say it every time. Then we talk about top level goals, quarterly goals. We do our financial summary. So we're taking a look at the budget versus actual, cash flow results. This is our 13-week cash flow. You don't always need to have that 13-week cash flow. We had to have it because we were a turnaround and money was super tight all the time. And it was a really valuable tool, but you don't always need to have it. But it is nice to see what cash is coming in. Last month's income statement, last month's revenue, and then we do a real quick pipeline, bookings, ARR, website traffic, lead gen, operations, wins, losses, challenges, plans, and then what's our next meeting. And that's how I do the monthly meeting. The quarterly meeting is very similar, but we go deeper into wins, losses, challenges, more into operations, like what are we doing, what products are we building, what products were released, etc. Let's go back. Let's see what else I got in here. And that's it. So quick. Yeah. All right. Questions?
Can I ask just on the scorecard? I didn't. So, what's the purpose of the scorecard if you can have a really detailed cascading, or it's just?
Well, so scorecard is looking back. So you're looking at, like, a lot of times in cascading, you're not in the cascading goals. You don't see the trend on revenue. Like that was actually why I was showing that one at the top. Like we saw this MRR growth over time. If we go back and take a look at that.
Okay, I see. So your scorecard is just basically various different metrics which make up the revenue base. Right?
Yeah, well, revenue,
traffic,
exactly. It really depends on what you're, like I said, like on this one, we had like invoicing was a major issue. So we actually made it number 2 on that list because like we were recognizing revenue that we weren't collecting, and it was a major problem. And so like this, so we were looking at this really heavily. But really, like what we want to see is like, is the trend going up? Is the trend going down? Are we on track to hit these goals? Or are we not on track to hit these goals? That's what we're looking at in the scorecards. It's backwards looking. Cool. Other questions?
So the last chart that you do, like it's like a profit and loss comparison or PL comparison, right? What's it called?
A P&L variance. So it's a budget versus actuals and variance.
Yeah, and you do that by every month. I want to know a little bit more how you do that.
Okay.
A bit more details.
Cool.
I never complete something like that.
All right, so
So because this is actually what is telling you how far off your predictions are. So you
Exactly.
have to have it like how you build it in,
All right,
in your
so-
prediction model. Yeah.
all right, so your budget is you said in this document here, we knew our cash was going to be at this point, our EBITDA was going to be at this point, our costs for each one of these major departments was going to be here. Like that, every month we knew like that's where we were supposed to be.
But you do everything separately, month by month, but you build like something like that with the variance all the time, so you can see that the variance is going down or tracking that.
You know, I usually just did it month by month because like the variance it's like this. Like it's good to know. You know, it would be a good idea to have it, to be honest. I never really did it. I think it's probably the best answer there. It'd be nice to have to see how the variance is modifying.
The goal is kind of try to predict the future the best possible. You want to get better at predicting the future.
Yep.
Every time you only see the trending of your variance, right?
Exactly. So like we saw the snapshots of it. It would be nice to have a graph that shows how the variance is decreasing. I think that in this particular business, everything was on fire all the time. And so it was tough to do that.
And when you do this comparison, you realize, okay, these were off. Then what happened with the future prediction? You update it with the new information, or just keep?
Usually, all right. So, great question. Generally, build a budget at the beginning of the year. The budget flows throughout the rest of the year. If something major changes in the business and like that budget is no longer valid, come back and change the budget. Right? Like it's a question. Usually, kind of goes to the board to be like, is it worth it? Do we really want to spend the time to like redo this thing? In some cases, you don't have a choice because like, I don't know. Let's say the market crashes and you're like, okay, well, what do we like? This doesn't apply. Like we're just going to show this massive variance every single month now. Let's just redo it and like set some realistic goals for the company. And it's also good for morale sometimes because like if the market crashes and people are trying to hit here and there's no world in which that's going to happen, let's bring it down to a place where people can meet it and feel good and possibly even have some amount of their incentive plan still apply.
Okay, got it. And then you would put like in your word document here, you change the future prediction from that point on.
Yeah, exactly. And I just note like in this board meeting, we agreed we're going to redo. We'll present the new budget at the next board meeting, and then get feedback and go from there. Generally, I don't like to do it because it's time consuming, and you're in the middle of operating and doing all the things, and it's like, do we really need to do this? But sometimes you have to.
Okay, got it.
Cool.
When you have your meetings with people, you ask them to set deadlines. What if you're not happy with that deadline? Would you like OKRs deal with that, or how would you deal with that in a conversation-wise?
So, for your OKRs, deadlines for OKRs.
So you said you'd have a meeting, one-on-one meeting with like maybe a head of department or something, and you'd ask them to set their own deadlines?
Oh, deadlines are always, deadline is always the end of the quarter. Like the deadline is already set. It's what the goal is what they're setting. So maybe sometimes their goal is, I don't know, like they give you, like a lot of times what you get is people set goals that are just their job. It's like, they're like, well, I answer support calls, so my goal is to answer X number of support calls. And you're like, your job is to increase the quality of support calls. Like the goal is to increase the quality. The goal is to, what is the thing that it's leading up to? Is not just answering support calls like that. Yeah, that's your job, but that's not a goal. That's your job. We don't put jobs into the goal sheet. We put things that drive the company forward into the goal sheet, with the exception of the sales team. I put like the number of calls they're making. I put their activities into the goal sheet as well.
So you keep pushing the people until they give you a goal that's come from them and that is measurable.
Yeah. It's a goal that drives the company forward, that meets that objective, that drives towards that objective, that will accomplish their part of it, that is not just their job, for the most part, that makes sense and is a good goal. And when they don't give you that, you have to explain why. It's a coaching opportunity to grow this person. Some people take longer than others. Some people take years to figure this shit out. Some people figure it out immediately.
But if it takes so long to figure out how you deal with it,
I started giving them recommendations on like, how about something, what about something like, I kind of like give them responses that guide them in the right direction. But I don't like to. I like them to come up with that. Like the first time I'm like, that's not good because of these reasons, come up with something else. Come back to me tomorrow with some better ideas on this. And I do that a couple times. If they can't get it from there, I'm like, well, how about if we think about it in this kind of direction? And if they still can't do it, then I'll start like giving them how to do it. But if that's the case, then I'm gonna have somebody else who's doing a good job start working with them for the next time. Like I'm not gonna have that conversation again. I'm gonna be like, all right, Susan, you did a great job on your stuff. Johnny's having a tough time. Work with him on those goals for next quarter. And then after y'all come together on stuff, then send it over to me.
Right, that's the
Yeah,
that's the final solution.
yeah, exactly. All right, other questions?
One question actually, it's maybe a bit technical on the churn. Have you been modeling that out on a cohort by cohort basis, or were you just applying like a percentage kind of?
Great question. It depends on the company. Like in this company that I was managing, it was just general churn because it was an established company with thousands of customers, and it was it didn't make sense to do it on a cohort basis because our sales were very slow. Really, what we were doing was like we had lots of customers and they were churning, and we were not adding hardly any. And that it wasn't until the end of the business that we actually started adding them when it would be worth doing more of a cohort basis. But this, because it was true enterprise sales, every sale was different. Every sale was individual. We weren't getting in, like you couldn't go online and sign up for the thing. So
the SaaS companies who do the cohort, it's like to measure whether the product feature made a difference, right?
Yeah.
Whether like a new marketing channel.
exactly. Yeah. So in this case, it didn't apply. But in other SaaS businesses, absolutely applies. And also, if you're looking at churn for a SaaS business, on Profitwell, I don't remember I think it's profitwell.com. There's a great article on how to calculate churn because there's a lot of ways to calculate churn. And if you're looking at that, it's really worth thinking about the right way to calculate churn for your business. Other questions? All right, what'd y'all think? Was this helpful? Cool? Get good stuff out of it? It's gonna help you grow your businesses?
It's probably too much for one presentation.
Yeah, I said 3 things, I did 4.
Yeah.
It was really just 2 things. It was forecasting and OKRs, but I felt like they come together so much.
When I've done this,
Makes complete sense.
yeah, when I've done similar things, I've done an only scorecard workshop, and that was 90 minutes.
Gotcha.
And I think it just depends on what you want to do. If you want to do a high level or if you want to do a little bit more of a deep dive. And I think you're kind of in the middle of that here. You're doing like a medium level dive on a bunch of things. And so, yeah, you could take someone and do this all this on a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing about scorecards I found interesting, I noticed yours was also like the third thing, which is great. Because when I started helping people with their operations ready for growth, intuitively, I was like, let's do the goals first, let's do the scorecard, the metrics first, figure out what you're measuring. And psychologically, I wasn't vibing. And when I showed up to a client and said, let's do that, there's a slot. If I first did a couple of other things that were still beneficial and helping them see what their company was, and then came back to this scorecard later, it was a much easier sell. So I don't know if you've had experiences like that.
Yeah, well, I did the same thing. I tried to set up scorecards at first, and I was like, it didn't make sense because I didn't know what they were doing. And we were like looking backwards on stuff, and like their shit was all over the place. And I was like, let's figure out where we're going first, and like what the goals are. Yeah, and then we'll figure out how to view a scorecard. So yeah. So anyway, if anybody has an extra 2 or 3 minutes to give me a testimonial, I'm trying to build a personal brand starting in January. I don't have anything out yet on it. I'm going to start a YouTube channel where I'm just going to like deep dive into all of this stuff for all of 2024. That's my plan. Is 2024 is all about building, like getting all my knowledge on all of this stuff. And this was just like, I could talk for weeks about this stuff. So that's my goal. If you want to give me a testimonial, I have my camera, just like, hey, got a lot out of this, or it was helpful, or I'm thinking I'm going to grow my business in this way. That would be fantastic. And I'm just going to use it for that. Yeah. So that was it. Thank you guys. Appreciate your time. I hope it was helpful.